Hello, this is Mr. Doty again, and this video is another intro AutoCAD video, and what we're going to do on this one is talk to you a little bit about the ribbon and how you can start doing some stuff with the ribbon. So first of all, what you have to do is you need to start off with, you got to start a drawing, right? So let's do that. So basically, when you come up, AutoCAD has your start option here. At least that's the way it pops up on mine. If it doesn't pop up on yours, then let me know. There's this wizard thing that sometimes comes up, and if you can turn that thing off, that'd be great, because honestly, this is where you need to start from. Okay, so start drawing. Okay, so in another video I talked about some different things, status bar down here, talked about the ribbon, your pull down menus, your quick access toolbar, and your application button or application menu. And you got your command line. Well, this time let's talk about some commands and entering commands and just figure out how to draw some things. So basically, what I like to do is just kind of start from the left and work my way across. For the chapter 2 part of a book that we're working in right now for CAD 100, or if you're using a different book and you're in a different class, that's okay. Feel free to use my video. So anyway, let's just start with line. So there's different ways you can input. You can use the keyboard. You can type in L enter for line. Hit escape to get out of it. Now, don't use escape to finish out a command. Honestly, use enter. Don't forget your space bar is your enter key. Also the enter buttons, obviously, and then you have your right click as well. So you only use escape when you want to get out of something that you're in that you didn't mean to be in the first place, or you have something picked, and we'll talk about that too. So you can click on line. So you'll notice that it gives me a starting point. Well, most books talk to you about coordinates. You've got three kinds of coordinates. You have absolute coordinates, you have polar coordinates, and relative coordinates, or relative coordinates and then polar coordinates. Well, honestly, there's really just two different ones. There's absolute and relative. Polar coordinates just happen to deal with angles, but they're relative. And you're like, well, what the heck does that mean? Okay, so let's just say that I want to draw a line from 1, 1, right? And let's say I want it to go at some kind of an angle. And some distance. Now, relative means that, yeah, I gave it an absolute dimension to start with. So I have it at 1, 1, right? Is that what I said? I think so. Yeah, there it is, right there. See, I can read down here. So 1, 1. Well, if I wanted to type in another coordinate, let's say 2, 2. Now, for those of us math people, I don't know if I'm a math person, but anyway, in math, that would mean that I would go to the coordinate 2, 2. Well, if it's relative, I really don't care where I started from, and all I care about is I know I want to go x 2 over and then y 2 up. So let's just show you. This is relative. So all right, so there's that, right? Okay. Now, since I have my coordinates on down here, let's see what coordinate I'm really at. So if I look at this, if you look at it, it's basically 1, 1, right? And then if I move up here, it's actually 3, 3. And you're like, but you put in 2, 2. Yeah. And you'll also notice that when I put in 2, 2, it made this little at symbol down here. Well, when you have the at symbol, it's relative. In other words, it's relative to where I am at. So what's the difference? Well, I mentioned in the other video about turning some things off and on, well, making them visible, not turning them off and on, by using your little thing over here, little menu. Alright, well, dynamic input's very important because in the base setup for AutoCAD, if it is on, which is the little battery here, if it's on, everything input after your first, point. So like specify first point, 1, 1. Or you pick a spot out in space somewhere. Everything after that initial point is relative. So when I put in 1, 1 as a starting point and I said, well, I want to go 2, 2, well, I was saying that I know how far I want to go, not the exact coordinate I want to go to. It's not like a GPS where, I know this coordinate and to get to this point, I have to know what that coordinate is. That takes a lot of thinking and it makes your brain hurt if you have to figure out what the exact coordinate is for each point. What really matters is how far am I from point to point and how do I get there? That's really what matters, and that's why when you get AutoCAD out of the box, they don't have this visible, because you want to leave it on. Now the other reason you want to leave it on 99% of the time, except for we're going to do eventually a tutorial inside of this tutorial, maybe not this video but another one, and you're going to actually have to turn it off. So I make it visible so that it's there. So let's turn it off. So I turn it off. The first thing you'll notice is if I go to line and I hit enter, there's nothing here at my cursor. You're saying, what? Alright, let me hit escape because I haven't done anything. Let's turn it back on. Alright, now line, notice it's at the cursor, enter, I have information, and then if I pick, I get this stuff, right? I can put in a distance, I can hit tab, I can put in an angle. We'll get back to that. Alright, and I don't want to do that right now, so I'm going to hit escape. See, that's where you use escape, and I didn't really want to do that, so I hit escape. I didn't want to keep it, I'm good. Alright, so let me turn it off. Let me go line, enter. See, now it just shows up down here, which is fine. I'm going to type in 1, 1. Right? Alright, same spot. Hey, absolute. It's at 1, 1. No problem. Okay, so now let's type in 2, 2. Isn't that what I said? So 2, 2. Well, I'll be darned, it's in a different spot. Now, if you hold down your middle mouse button, you can pan. And if you push forward and pull back, you can zoom in and out with your middle mouse scrolly button, okay? So left click is your left button on your mouse, right click is your right button on the mouse, and the scrolly button is the middle one. So anyway, when you are done with, like, I'll just, to kind of mark where it's at, I'll just pick that spot and then enter to finish out, which I use the space bar because I can keep my left hand up close to the keyboard and type things in, because that's how I learned. Whenever I learned this, you had to actually type in line, L-I-N-E. So yeah, having shortcuts, for like pull downs and toolbars and a ribbon, that made life a lot easier. But apparently I need to turn my phone down. Anyway, lots of fun for videos, right? Okay, so let's just let's review here. So this line, both lines start at 1, 1. This line, the second one I drew, goes from 1, 1 to the exact absolute coordinate of 2, 2, which, if I was measuring, is only 1 over and 1 up, right? That's the difference between the two. Well, when it's relative, which is what we do 99% of the time, when things are relative, we don't care where the points are to start with. We just need to know how far it is from point A to point B. So if I'm going 2, 2 from this guy, then, oh, it's actually 2 over and 2 up. I'm not going to the actual 2, 2 coordinate, right? So GPS would tell me I'm going here, but my distance that I'm saying that I want to go is here. So that's the difference between absolute and relative. Now, I don't know how well that sinks in, but let's try something else. So I've got this off, right? So if I go to line and I specify 5, 2, sorry, 5, 2. So that is an actual point in space, and it doesn't matter what command I'm in. The first point that I pick, or if I type it in, is an absolute coordinate, because it has to know exactly where it's at, right? So then what we do is I would have to know the coordinate that I wanted to go to. All right, so if I knew that I wanted to go to 2, 2, then it goes to the actual 2, 2 coordinate. Well, I'll be honest with you, that gets a little old. And we just explain this so that you get the gist between absolutes and relatives. Okay? So if this guy is off, dynamic is off, and you haven't monkeyed with any other settings, if it's off, everything is absolute. So you're like, well, how did you learn how to do relative? Well, what they taught us was, if you go back into line, so if I hit enter, it goes back into the previous command. So let's say that I just pick a point. I didn't type it in, I picked a point. But I want to go 2, 2 from that point. How do I make it go there instead of the actual 2, 2 coordinate? Well, what you do is you hold down Shift 2 and you get the @ symbol. You see right there. When dynamic is on, it implies and gives that to you automatically. The funny thing is I can type in the @ symbol anyway, and it knows that, oh, hey, you want relative, even though I'm already in relative mode, you want to use relative, right? I'm like, okay. Well, when that's off, which we're going to leave it on most of the time, just to give you a heads up. If it's off, use the @ symbol, and you don't have anything at your tip, which is okay, and you type in, what did I say? I wanted to go 2, 2, 2, 2. Now they're positive, right? So that means it's always going to go, if it's positive, it goes left, other left, goes right and up. Need more coffee, I guess. So if it's positive, it goes right and up. If it's negative, it goes down and to the left. So let's just type this in, @ 2, 2. Notice that it went 2, 2, and guess what? It looks parallel to this guy, right? Even though I drew it starting over here, and it's the same length, right? Okay, so I mentioned that there was another type of coordinate called a polar coordinate, and I don't know, sometimes things kind of dawn on me, and I know how to do stuff, but I don't realize why. Weird stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay. Polar coordinates, I know what it is, I just didn't think anything about it. But when you think of polar, you need to think of a circle and angles, okay? That's all you need to remember. So my plan for the day is to show you how do you draw something that you need at an angle. So if I know the exact distance from it, X and Y, I can do that. But what if I know the distance and I have an angle? Because those are the two ways you can locate an angle. Well, what if I say at, in this case, and then I say, I don't know, 5, and I do shift, comma, which is the less than symbol, I think, but it's shift, the right shift key, and it's the third key over, it's next to the M on your keyboard. So if you look at that, you'll figure it out. But anyway, you do the less than symbol, or I call it the angle symbol in AutoCAD. And then what angle do I want to go? Well, the way AutoCAD works is your angles start on the right at 0. So just think of it north, south, east, and west. So we start on the eastern seaboard, right? We start over at New York City on the east, right? And that's 0. So we go up north, and we're going to go to Detroit, right? So that's north. And then we're going to go west out to California. Pick any city out in California, or I guess you could pick Las Vegas because it's out west. And that's 180. So 0, New York City, north, Detroit, 90, Las Vegas, west, 180, and then we're going to go down to New Orleans, let's say, for south, and that one's 270. So if you take your circle, you divide it into 4 pie pieces of 90 degrees, you've got 0, 90, 180, 270, back around to 360 or 0. All right, so let's back the truck up. So if I wanted to go at 14 degrees, well, that's 14 degrees off of this side over here, okay? So I just type in enter, and now I have drawn something that's 5 units long, and it's at 14 degrees. And that's a polar coordinate. All right, so I'm going to hit enter to finish it out. So the difference between absolute and relative. Absolute means it's absolute, that this is 1, 1, this is 2, 2. Relative is, yeah, this is 1, 1, or my starting point, and I really don't care what coordinate I'm on. I just know that I need to go 2, 2 up to here, and boom, there I am. So that's the difference between relative and absolute. And then your polar is really easy because it's relative, it's just at an angle. Okay, so I'm going to turn this guy back on because most of the time I want it on for more than one reason. For one reason is when I go into line, I get that right there, and that's awesome. So if I pick a spot right here, I can do this. I could type in that 5, I could hit tab, and then I could type in that 14 degrees, and guess what? I just drew the same line, and I didn't have to type in, all that special polar stuff. But I could still do the same thing. So let's do it again. So let's go to line. I'm going to pick this spot. I'm going to do, now, yes, everything's relative, but hello, when you do a polar coordinate, you just have to type in shift 2, and it's going to say, oh, you want to do relative. Cool, I can do that. So to make it go into the polar mode, you still need to do your at symbol, and then you type in your distance. You do your angle symbol, right? And then you do 14. Boom. Basically, that's the same thing as what I did here. I just didn't have to type in the at because it gave me that information, right? I could put that information in, put the angle in, and go. Now, what happens if I accidentally hit tab and I wanted to go back? Shift tab would go back, because you can't just go try to pick it with your mouse. You can't get there from here. So, all right, so there's your coordinates. and that's how you use the line command. You just, pick around. You'll notice also, and something that we'll cover in another video, object snaps, where you can click on like to the end of something or the intersection of something, and we'll talk more about that later. Alright, so another 20 minutes down, and we've learned about polar coordinates. We've learned about absolute coordinates. Remember that if you leave this on, dynamic on, that everything's relative. But if you want to do a polar coordinate, like I said, a distance at an angle, then you have to put in the @ symbol, period. Now, if you go to line and you say boom, and then you say I want to go 6, 32, then sure, you don't have to put in the @ symbol, and that's fine. But if you want to do a polar coordinate, you're always going to put in the @ symbol. Alright, well, that's all I'm going to go over on this one, and we'll see if we can get this posted, and we'll keep on trucking. We'll catch you on the next video. Have fun.